award-winning storyteller and a songwriter, I believe. And again, he came all the way from Sterling Falls. It's like a 2.5-hour ride, so we appreciate him coming out here to join us today. And he's going to stay on the New England theme, I believe, and fall. So after we do the raffles, I hope that you'd really give him a big round of welcome, and hope you enjoy the show. Thank you again to Boston Tavern. The dinner was delicious, I think.
You guys know who I am now. My name is Davis, but my mother taught me when I was growing up that introductions are a two-way street, and I still do some of the things my mom taught me. In fact, she says I do more of them now than when she was trying to teach me. This is one of them. To save some time, because if we went one by one, it would take so long you wouldn't get to hear any songs or any stories. On the count of 3, so I know who everybody is, just say your name. Okay, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice to meet you. Now, I may not remember all those names. That's a lot to learn at once. But now that we know each other, I can give you some stories, and I can give you some songs, and every single story I give you and song I give you, I'm not taking them back. You get to keep them and give them to somebody else. This story I found in a book, and it's one of my mom's favorite stories, so I like to tell it as often as I can because I like my mom. And it's besides that, it starts, as a lot of stories do, once upon a time. Yeah, it's in the union rules. You got to do at least one story like that. This is it, I promise. Once upon a time, there was a tailor. Now, tailors make clothes for a living, like you and I are wearing. They make shirts, hats, coats, all sorts of stuff. This tailor wanted something for himself. For this time of year, when it gets cold, like it's going to do this weekend, he wanted a coat for himself. But he was too poor to make things for himself. He always had to make things for other people and sell them, get enough money to buy food, pay the rent, still have enough money to buy cloth to make something else to sell. But gradually he scrimped and saved. Anytime there was spare change jingling in his pocket, he would take it out and put it in a jar. I would do that too, except we have a tradition in my family that my dad started, that the kids get to wrestle with the dad, and any change that falls out of the dad's pockets, the kids get to keep. I don't wrestle with my kids anymore. My son's 22, my daughter's 17. We just skip the wrestling part. There's a jar. I take the coins out of my pocket. I put it in. He didn't have any kids. So he finally saved enough money to buy himself some cloth to make a coat. He made a big wool coat. It came way down below his knees. He liked it so much, he wore it even when it wasn't quite cold enough to wear it outside. Unbuttoned, flapping in the breeze, he wore the coat and wore it until the coat was all worn out. At least he thought it was worn out. He looked. There was a hole in the elbow, and he'd just gotten a puppy. You know how puppies like to play? Well, the puppy was playing with him, and the puppy jumped up and tore a hole in the back of the coat. But he looked and he saw there was enough good material left to make something else. So he cut off the bottom of the coat, he patched up the top, and he had a jacket, which was better. He could wear it more often, and he did. He wore it and wore it and wore it till the jacket was worn out right. At least he thought it was. He looked, another hole, same elbow. He was always leaning on that elbow, and he was thinking about what he was going to make, and he thought so hard he wore a hole in the elbow. And the puppy had grown up to be a dog, which is what a lot of puppies do for a living. Grow up to be dogs. It was a big dog, about this big, but even big dogs, a lot of them like to play. And they were playing, and the dog jumped up and tore a hole in the back of the jacket. But he looked and he saw there was enough good material left to make something else. So he cut off the sleeves this time. He patched up the middle and had a vest. Just about like this one, except there wasn't enough material for pockets. But he didn't care. He wore the vest almost every day. He wore it and wore it and wore it till the vest was, yes. At least he thought it was. He looked, here and here was shot. He was always bragging about what a good tailor he was. And when he bragged, he held onto the vest like this, and he bragged so hard he wore holes here and here. But he didn't brag holding onto the back of the vest, because then he'd look like a chicken. And people would laugh like that. That's not the point of bragging. I had people laugh at you, so the back was fine. There was enough good material left to make something else. He took the vest, cut about 20 pieces out, sewed them up into a nice cloth hat, kind of like a patchwork baseball cap. He put it on his head. He looked at himself in the mirror and said, "Whoa, you're looking good." And he was. It's actually a very good thing to say to yourself every day. You know, whether you're wearing a hat or not, a lot of us, we get out of the habit because we see these TV ads and magazine ads that tell us we should look like other people. So in case this has happened to you, pretend you're putting on a hat. This is the only audience participation part of this story. It feels really good, I promise. Just pretend you're putting on a hat. I won't pretend because I've got one. Hold up a mirror, okay? Pretend mirror. There's safety in numbers. We're all going to do this. It may have been a while for some of you. It feels really good, I promise. On the count of 3, just tell yourself, whoa, you're looking good. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, you're looking good. Yeah, and you all look great to me. You do that every day. You feel great about yourself. And he did that every day because he wore the hat every day. He wore it indoors. He wore it outdoors. He even wore the hat to bed with him. The only time he took it off was to wash his hair. He wore it and wore it and wore it till the hat was, yes, at least he thought it was worn out. Because when he looked, the brim was shot, but over here was okay. There was enough good material left to make something he'd been needing a long time. He had a hole in the knee of one of his pairs of pants. So he made something you don't see as often as you did when I was a kid. He made a patch. He took the hat out, cut 10 pieces, sewed them up into a patchwork patch, put it carefully over the hole, and sewed it on. He liked that patch. That was the best patch he'd ever made in his life. He liked that patch so much when that pair of pants was dirty and it was time to wear his other pair of pants, he took the patch off the first pair and he put it on the second pair, even though that pair didn't have a hole. He didn't care. He did each week, moving the patch, one pair of pants to the other, wearing it till the patch was, yes, worn out. At least he thought it was. Because he looked, there was a hole right through to the first one, but all 4 corners were almost as good as new. So he took the patch, cut the 4 corners, and sewed them up into a nice cloth button. He put the button right on his shirt, even though he was wearing a t-shirt. He sewed it on like a belly button right about here, and he liked the button so much, he did the same thing he'd done with the patch. He moved it from shirt to shirt, sometimes wearing it on the collar, sometimes on the sleeve, the back, the front. He wore the button and wore it until the button was, yes, at least he thought it was. Because when he looked at the button, he could see there was just enough left of it to make a story out of it. So he made a story out of it, and now I've told it to you. And the nice thing about stories, most of them, they don't get worn out as quickly as clothing. That story is over 300 years old, and I have told it hundreds of times, so if you want to tell it to somebody, you don't have to worry about wearing it out. And that's the story. Now, that's actually an old Yiddish story. It used to be a song. A song, but with a story in it. And it came over to this country around 1900 from Germany or Austria. And even though it's an old Yiddish song from a Jewish tradition, it actually speaks to the New England spirit. There was this man named Donald Hall. He was actually the poet laureate of this country a few years back. And he did what a lot of kids did when he was growing up, who lived in cities in the summer. He would go on vacation to a farm. He had a grandfather who had a farm up in New Hampshire. This used to happen, folks from Springfield, folks from Boston, Nashua, New Hampshire. If you had a relative who lived on a farm, you would often go there in the summer, just the kids. They'd go on a train, get picked up at the closest station, go up to the farm, and that's what he did, stay up there, have a kind of working vacation, help with the haying, go swimming a lot, and then get on the train and go back to Philadelphia where he lived. And after his grandfather passed away, they went up to clean out the old farm, you know. And he went up in the attic and found this shoebox in the attic with the string to hold the top on. And there was a label right on the top of the shoebox. And it said in his grandfather's handwriting, "String too short to be saved." So he took a pair of scissors and he cut off the string holding the top on, took off the top, and there in the box were all these little pieces of string that were too short to be saved, but then again, if you're from New England, you never know. So you save it anyway. And so that song speaks to the New England spirit. And I told you it used to be a song, but someone whose singing voice was the kind of voice, whenever they started singing, people would go like this, "Oh, stop." They decided they just better tell it, otherwise nobody would ever hear it. This song is still a song. It's a story, too. It traveled from England over to this country, through Canada, and then down into Maine, where it got collected. It has a chorus, which I'll teach you. It's very short, very easy to learn. The chorus goes like this. Fal-de-lal-day. That's it. Yeah, it makes no sense, but it's short, easy to remember. Okay, on the count of three, we'll all do it together. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Fal-de-lal-day. You've got it. Harmonies are welcome as you learn it more and more, like 2-part, 3-part, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12. This is folk music. There are no wrong notes in this kind of folk music. And you'll know when the chorus is coming because the last two words of every verse where the story is and sing. So it won't take you by surprise. Okay? Now I'll give you the story in the song. Here it goes. There was a rich farmer in Yorkshire did dwell, had Jack for a servant, and that you know well. The cows being gathered, he had one to spare. He said, Johnny, me boy, you must go to the fair and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. Well, in through the glare and out through the glen, Jack led the cow with a rope in his hand. And on his way there he came to 3 men, and he sold them the cow for 16 pounds 10 and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. Came to an old woman, to her he did say, where shall I put all this money away? Into your coat lining, to him she did say, in case on the road some robber may be and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. Well, on his way home he came to a dark lane. Out jumped a robber, I'll tell you in plain. Deliver your money without any strife, or with this flat sword I'll take your sweet life and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. Well, he ripped open the lining, the money fell out. All in the tall grass it lay scattered about. And while the robber was picking it up in his purse, Jack made no delay, but jumped on the robber's horse and sang. Fal-de-lal-day. Well, the robber he called out, he bade Jack to stay. Jack made no answer, just rode on his way. Straight home to his master's own house he did go, with a bridle and saddle instead of a cow and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. Well, the farmer came out all in a great fuss. He said, Johnny, me boy, me cow's turned into a horse. Oh, master, your cow I have sold, but I have been robbed of your silver and gold and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. Well, he looked in the saddle, and lo and behold, 5,000 pounds of silver and gold, besides 2 brass pistols, and the farmer did vow, he said, Johnny, me boy, you've well sold me cow and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. And now for your brave and honorable day, half of this money will come to your pay. Besides, if she'll have you, my daughter, for a wife, and you shall live well all the days of your life and sing. Fal-de-lal-day. That's the well-sold cow. Thank you. And I like to think that Jack and the farmer's daughter saw through the plan to keep all the money in the family. And they liked each other okay, but maybe not quite that much. So he took his half of the money and walked down the road a ways and got himself a place. You know, you can do that with stories. If you don't like the ending, you can change it. If it doesn't go far enough, you want to know what happened next and nobody ever told you, you can just make it up. That's what people have been doing for a really long time. That's a trickster story, a certain kind of story called a trickster story. There's a lot of them. Jack is a very famous trickster. The most famous story about him is Jack and the Beanstalk, of course. And then there are animal tricksters, some of whom you can see on Saturday, or used to be able to see on Saturday mornings. When I was growing up, when I was little, my mom taught me very early where the cereal was, where the bowls were, how to pour cereal and milk without spilling, where the spoons were, how to turn on the TV and how not to turn it up so loud that it would wake her up. And then she said to me, on Saturdays, I don't get up till 9. Now you know how to get breakfast. Now you know what to watch. I'll be up at 9, don't worry. So I'd make myself breakfast and I would watch Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner Hour. And Bugs Bunny is actually based on a Native American trickster, a rabbit trickster called Nanabojo from around the Great Lakes. And Coyote, from Coyote and Roadrunner, Native Americans have told stories about Coyote the trickster for thousands of years. And we didn't used to have any coyotes in New England. We had wolves, and they were hunted down until there were no more wolves left. And then coyotes, they're such opportunists. They made their way out west into New England, and they interbred with some wolves on the way. So now the coyotes we have here are much bigger than the ones when they started out west. Well, this story about Coyote, it happened so long ago that when it happened, there were no stars up in the sky at all. No, just the moon. It would travel across the night sky. In the morning, the sun would come up, chase the moon out of the sky. And one night, the Creator was walking along, looking at the moon. It was beautiful, nice and full, but it looked lonely, all by itself up in the sky. And the Creator thought, wait, I've got all these little bits of light left over from making the moon. Kind of like sawdust, only light. They're in a box in the closet. I'll bag them up. I'll call them stars. I'll hand out the bags to all the animals. I'll tell them they have one night to put their shapes up in the sky. It'll be beautiful. All these animal shapes spread over the sky. I'll only give them one night to do it. Because if I give them more, they'll be going, should put it here? No, over there. They need a little pressure. In the morning, any star left in their bag when the sun comes up will just disappear. And the Creator thought it was a great idea. Called all the animals around, handed out the bags of stars, told them the plan. Said, mouse, you can put your shape in the sky. Rabbit, you can put your shape in the sky. Deer, bear, yeah, coyote, even you can put your shape in the sky, but you only have tonight to do it. In the morning, any star left in your bag when the sun comes up will be gone. So when the moon comes up, get busy, have fun. And the Creator went away, and the animals, they were excited. Coyote was the most excited of all. Coyote looked up in the sky and went, oh yeah. Oh yeah, coyote up in the sky. Me up in the sky. I like it. I like big. A big coyote, yeah, from there, over to there, from there, over there. I'll fill up the whole sky with me, coyote. Everybody, they'll look up at the sky, they'll go, whoa, what a big coyote. Won't look at anybody else, just me. What a great idea. Coyote had a problem with thinking. Every time he did it, it made him tired. You know the type, right? He said, have a nap. He lay down. It was going to be a short nap, but he kept sleeping. The sun began to set. He was still sleeping. The moon came up. Coyote still slept. All the animals started putting their stars up in the sky. Coyote was still sleeping. Mouse finished first. Coyote slept. Rabbit, deer, bear. All the animals had finished putting their stars up in the sky. Coyote was still sleeping. And that's when the moon began to set. The sky grew light in the east. And Rooster crowed. And Coyote woke up. Saw the moon setting. The sky getting light and thought, oh, wait, I got to get my stars up in the sky. They're going to disappear. He ripped open his bag. He threw it up in the sky, and the stars spilled in a long, wide line right across the sky. That's how the Milky Way got up there. Coyote throwing his bag of stars, and Coyote looked at that long, wide line of stars, and it really didn't look anything at all like a coyote. And he just went, oh no, no. And ever since then, coyotes look up in the night sky. And they see the Milky Way, and it still looks nothing like a coyote. So they go, oh no, oh no. So next time you hear one, you'll know what they're saying. And that's how Coyote got his howl. Now that story traveled here from out west. This song also traveled from out west. And I don't know where my dad learned it, but he learned it somewhere. And when I was growing up, I had a bedtime of 7:30. 7:30, yep. That's when I'm supposed to be in bed, teeth brush, pajamas, bath every other night. And then my mom or dad would read to us, sometimes for half an hour. And then the lights would go out, and my mom or dad, usually my dad, would sing to us for as much as a half hour. So my real go-to-sleep time was about 8:30. This song was one of my favorites the first 1,000 times I heard it. The second 1,000, it was okay. The third 1,000, I didn't mind hearing it. My brothers liked it. But then when I grew up, I'd heard it so many times, I didn't sing it much anymore until I learned how to play these. You seen these before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And how many of you have these at home? Okay, most of you. Right. I'm going to teach you how to play music with spoons. The first thing about playing music with spoons is if somebody in the room has a headache, it's a really good idea to go to another room to play them. The other thing is you have to use flat handle spoons. The round handle ones don't work very well for this at all. And then you can take 2 spoons, put one between your thumb and your first finger, the other between your first finger and your second finger. It's kind of like using chopsticks only upside down and backwards, which probably doesn't help you at all. And then you need a knee. So I'm going to borrow this stool from myself. And then you tap the spoons on your knee like this. Sounds like it hurts, but it doesn't. The bottom spoon isn't making noise. It's the top spoon that comes down. And then you can put your hand above your knee, go back and forth. You can run them across your fingers like this. Sort of the Lone Ranger effect, which kind of dates me a little bit. And then you can combine the different sounds and movements and play music with spoons. And different spoons have different sounds. These I got from 99 Restaurant, actually. I asked permission first. My mom, I had dinner with my mom. We got to dessert. They gave us these spoons. They were great spoons. I thought, oh, I went up when we paid the bill. I said, could I buy these spoons off you? And they said, why do you want them? I said, I play music with spoons. They said, oh, just take them. Just say where you got them. So I just did. These spoons, I'm not going to play all the spoons I have. You'd get bored. I wouldn't, but you would. These spoons I got at a picnic. You can buy these spoons in boxes of 1,000 at BJ's, but it's much easier to just go to a picnic. You can get clean ones if you're fastidious, or you can get dirty ones and wash them off when you get home. They have a very different sound. Even though they're made out of plastic, and the only problem with plastic spoons is, even though they have a nice sound, they don't last as long. Eventually they get a little crack running down here and then they break in half. But they're easy to find more of them. These are the ones I'm going to play for this song, because they're bigger and they have a bigger sound. This song was sung by Irish American and African American railroad workers building the train tracks going out west, where they met Chinese American workers coming east. And they sang this song because they were singing as they used 16-pound sledgehammers for 12 hours a day, putting in these spikes, holding the railroad tracks together in hot weather. They would get bored and they'd make up songs like this. They go, I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. Now that's how fast they sang, because they didn't want to get tired. My dad sang it faster than that because he wanted me to get tired. So we're going to sing at the speed my dad sang it, and I'll play the spoons. You can hear what it sounds like. Ready? Here we go. I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad just to pass the time away. Can't you hear the whistle blowing? Rise up so early in the morn. Can't you hear the captain shouting? Dinah, blow your horn. Let's go a little bit faster. Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Let's whisper. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Someone's in the kitchen, I know. Oh, oh, oh. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Ouch. Strumming on the old banjo and singing fee-fi, fiddly-i-o, fee-fi, fiddly-i-o, fee-fi, fiddly-i-o. Strumming on the old banjo. That's it. Now, you can actually play spoons a different way. If you're having trouble holding them just right in your hand, you showed me earlier what you did with your spoons. Do you still have them in your pocket? Yeah. Yeah, just take a block of wood and then tape it, and then you can play the spoons like that. It's a pretty traditional musical instrument, and it's very cheap. You can stick them in your back pocket and go places with them. There are folks from Ireland came to this country during the potato famine, and if you were a fiddle player back in the 1800s and you wanted to come to Boston or New York, because of course the streets in the US were paved with gold, that's what they said over in Ireland, you could sell your fiddle and get the money to buy a ticket over here, and then they would stick a pair of spoons in their back pocket, and even though they sold their fiddle, they still knew all the fiddle tunes. On board ship, they'd be real popular because they'd do what's called mouth music. They would sit up on deck and they'd sing all the dance tunes. They go, yum bum beat a lum bum bum, yum bum beat a lum bum bum. And they would play the spoons and people would dance on deck. They come over, get to Boston, New York, get a job, and then get enough money to buy another fiddle. Spoons travel along really easily. Stories travel too, and sometimes they get lost and then they get found again. I've only got a couple more stories for you, and I got a couple more songs, real quick ones. This story, even though it's not quite Christmas, although you wouldn't know it from going into the grocery store these days, I went into Big Y, which is what we have out in Western Massachusetts, and I just noticed that all the Halloween candy was gone and the Christmas candy was there already, which was a little strange because we hadn't got to Thanksgiving yet. So I'm going to tell you a Christmas story, but this Christmas story is not just about Christmas. It's also about how to find stories. I lived in this little town for a while called Leiden, Massachusetts. It's west of here and north of Greenfield. And back in the days when you used to get these maps in gas stations, before folks had the little maps that were up on the windshield that kept changing all the time as you drove, you could get a map and you'd open it up and there would be this little circle and the word Leiden next to it and no roads going there. That was the kind of town it was. Because it didn't have any state highways going through it. So, they didn't put them on some of these maps that only had state highways, and you just couldn't get there from here, as the saying goes. And I lived in there, and we were doing a 250th anniversary of the town, and we decided to do an oral history project and collect stories. I got a tape recorder and went around with some of the older folks from town. Edith Fisher and I were sitting in a kitchen with a table about this size, and Henry and Jesse Glayback were sitting on the other side, and we knew Jesse had a story to tell because we'd heard from other folks, and Jesse said, she looked at the tape recorder, and then she turned to Henry and she said, Henry, I don't like the way my voice sounds on a tape recorder. You tell the story. So Henry told the story because he usually did what Jesse told him to do. And this story happened back when there were 5 one-room schoolhouses in the town of Leiden. They were arranged kind of in the shape of a cross going across town. There was 3 going east to west, 3 north to south, and you didn't count the one in the middle twice because it was the same school. And they would have Christmas parties in every school. And they didn't have them all at the same time. Because how could Santa Claus come to every party if they scheduled them all at the same time? So they start in the morning in the west side of town, and they'd finish up in the afternoon at East Hill School where Jesse taught. And the way the party would work is Jimmy McDonald would come to start it off. He was a farm worker, but he was a really good fiddle player. He'd come and he'd sit on a stool, a short stool, right next to the Christmas tree that was in the corner of the school, and he'd play Christmas carols, and all the kids would sing, and then they'd hear sleigh bells, and they would run to the door, and they'd look out the door, and they would see Henry Glayback's dad driving a 2-horse sled, and right next to him on the sled was Santa Claus. And meanwhile, Jimmy would be packing up his fiddle. And the kids would run out to the sled when it stopped. They'd help Santa Claus down off the sled. Hey, Santa, where's your reindeer? And he'd say, oh, my reindeer. They have so many friends that live around here in the woods. They want to go visit. So I land at Henry's dad's place. I let him loose. They go visit. He's nice enough to bring me on the sled. Don't you think that's nice? I say, yeah, come on inside. They drag him inside. He passed Jimmy going out. Jimmy would trudge off through the snow to the next school to start the next Christmas party. Santa Claus would come in, and he'd sit down on the stool that Jimmy had keeping warm for him. And he'd visit with every kid, one at a time, getting on his lap, asking what their year had been like, what they're looking forward to. He had this big sack with little presents wrapped in them, and one for each kid with their name on them. He'd hand them out. When he visited with every kid, giving one present to every kid, he'd say, Merry Christmas. He'd go off, and he'd get on the sled and follow Jimmy to the next school. Well, Henry told me one year when Jesse was teaching at East Hill School, Santa Claus seemed real tired. He'd been working awful hard, bags under his eyes, barely keeping them open, talking to the kids and stuff. And when Santa Claus, the last kid, got off his lap at the last school and he got off of the stool, he leaned a little bit too close to the Christmas tree. Which these days would make no never mind, but this was back before electricity. In order to have lights on the tree, they had these little candles about this long, red, green, and white ones. They were put in these little silver candle holders, with little flutes on the bottom and clip on the bottom of that. They'd clip them out at the ends of the branches. And one of the teacher's jobs was when she heard those sleigh bells and Jimmy started packing up his fiddle, she would light as many of the candles as she could before Santa Claus came inside. And then when he left to go follow Jimmy to the next school, she would blow out all the candles. Well, he hadn't left yet. She hadn't blown out all the candles. When Santa leaned too close to the tree, his beard actually got caught in the flame of one of the candles, and his beard caught on fire. And he stood up. He started batting at his beard, tried to put the fire out. Now, Jessie Glayback, the teacher, she was a quick-thinking woman. That's one of the reasons they hired her as a school teacher. She came over and she picked Santa Claus up off the ground. She was also a big woman. That's the other reason they hired her as a school teacher. And she threw Santa Claus down onto the braided rug in the middle of the school. She rolled up the rug with Santa Claus inside it. She picked up the rug with Santa Claus inside it. She went to the front door of the school. She kicked open the door and she threw the rug with Santa Claus inside it out into the snowbank. And then she trudged out through the snow. She picked up the rug with Santa Claus inside it, brought it back into the school, plopped it down, gave it a kick, it unrolled, and there was Santa Claus lying in the middle of the braided rug. And his beard was about 4 inches shorter, but the fire was put out. And he stood up and he looked at Jessie and he said, "Thanks a lot, Jessie." And he looked at the kids and said, "Merry Christmas." And then he went off with Henry Glayback's dad to go gather up his reindeer. And when Henry told me that story back in 1982, he said to that day, and probably still to this day, when Santa Claus visits the town of Leiden in western Massachusetts, after visiting every house, he makes 2 turns around town. And he yells down, "Merry Christmas! And thanks again, Jessie." And that's a true story. How a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse in western Massachusetts saved Santa Claus's life. That's a good thing, too. That's the story. Now, I happen to know that's a true story because a few years later, over in Northfield, a few towns east along the Vermont border, I told that story at a church supper, and there was a woman in her 60s who came up to me and said that she was a first grader in East Hill School on the day that happened. And she remembered it. Now, I'm going to go back to Thanksgiving. One of my favorite desserts, and also one of my favorite breakfasts, is pumpkin pie. We have a tradition in my family that we make 2 pumpkin pies for Thanksgiving dinner. Actually, one of them is not for Thanksgiving dinner because there are so many other pies we never get to the second one, and we know it's going to be there at breakfast. And also we make a ton of whipped cream because I think pumpkin pie is actually one of the best excuses I've ever heard of for having whipped cream. And I tend to have a lot of it, although my son thinks I'm crazy. And I happen to know a song about pumpkin pie which has a little bit longer chorus, which I'm going to teach you. And then you'll know it, and you can sing it around the Thanksgiving table if you want to, if folks won't kick you out of the house. Here's the chorus. I'll teach you in stages. It goes like this. Pumpkin pie, she made a special pumpkin pie. That's the first part. Pumpkin pie, she made a special pumpkin pie. The next part goes, pumpkin pie, you never tasted such a pumpkin pie. Try that part. Pumpkin pie, you never tasted such a pumpkin pie. Now we'll string it all together, and then I'll sing the verses where the story is, because I know it. Okay, here's the chorus. Pumpkin pie, she made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, you never tasted such a pumpkin pie. Now in the West there lived a maid, she was a cook who knew her trade. She baked cookies, cakes, and oh my, she made a very special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. She made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. You never tasted such a pumpkin pie. Now this young cook fell in love with a man. He was a gardener who worked the land. He grew potatoes, beans, and oh my, orange pumpkins 3 feet high. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. She made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. You never tasted such a pumpkin pie. At the harvest fair he won the prize for his pumpkin of enormous size. He gave it to the cook to try, and she made a very special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. She made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. You never tasted such a pumpkin pie. She took eggs and milk and some sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and some ginger. Special spices she did try to woo the gardener with her pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. She made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. You never tasted such a pumpkin pie. After one mouthful, his eyes began to glaze. After 2 mouthfuls, he fell into a daze. My lovely cook, you're the apple of my eye. I'd love to taste some more of your pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. She made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. You never tasted such a pumpkin pie. Now the gardener and the cook, they're as happy as can be, living with children 1, 2, 3. They'll be happy until they die with regular helpings of pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. She made a special pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie, pumpkin pie. You never tasted such a pumpkin pie. That's the song. No, I learned that from a friend of mine who found it in a book. Luckily, a lot of people ran around collecting these songs. Sometimes, though, you can't find stories in a book, but you can find them in a closet, you can find them in the attic, or you can find them wrapped around your finger. If you look up here, you see this ring? This ring was my grandfather's wedding ring. He wore this ring for 62 years. That's how long he and Graham were married. And Grandpa and I, we were born 2 days and 50 years apart. I was born April 4th, 1955. He was born April 2nd, 1905. And maybe it was being born so close to April Fool's Day, but Gramp liked to play tricks. Like this one, I'd always sit next to him at the dinner table so he could do it. I'd be sitting there minding my own business. He would reach under the table where nobody could see him, especially my grandmother, and he would grab my knee right in that funny bone spot. Yeah, the tickles, it makes you jump. And I would jump, and my mother would look over at me and she'd say, Davis, stop fooling with your grandfather. Mom, he's the one who did it. Cut it out. A little while later, he'd reach over again, he'd grab my knee again, and I would jump. And she'd say, Davis, stop fooling with your grandfather. You're going to have to go to bed. Mom, he's really the one doing it. I found out later when my mother was a kid, her father, my grandfather, used to do the same thing to her. Reach under the table, grab her knee, she would jump, and her mother, my grandmother, would say, Nancy, stop fooling with your father, you're going to have to go to bed. I wanted one thing more than anything else. I wanted to get him back. I wanted to grab his knee and make him jump. But he started doing this to me when I was about 3 years old. My hand was too small. His knee was too big. I would try, but I couldn't get around far enough. He'd just smile, reach over, grab my knee. I would jump. My mom would say, Davis, it took me till I was 13 years old for my hand to get big enough and for me to get fast enough. I'd almost given up hope, but one Thanksgiving dinner, I was sitting next to Grant. He was looking at my brother on the other side of him, not looking at me. I thought, here's my chance. I'll surprise him. He's not looking. I reached over as quick as I could. I grabbed at his knee, and my hand must have just grown a little bit or something, because for the first time ever, I hit that spot. I grabbed him so hard, it tickled him so much. He jumped so high, his knees hit the table, the whole table shook, milk spilled here and there all over the table, and my mother looked over at my grandfather and she said, George, stop fooling with your grandson or you're going to have to go to bed. And he just looked at me and he laughed. And after that, we were always trying to get each other, grab each other's knee, make each other jump, even when he was in his 80s and I was in my 30s. We're still doing it. I had a lot of fun with Gramp growing up. He taught me how to play baseball, took me to my first Red Sox game at Fenway Park, which they lost, of course. And they did that at important moments in my life for quite a while until a few years ago, and now they're doing it again. He also taught me how to go fishing, and he taught me something about teasing. Whenever my mother would say to me, "Davis, stop fooling with your grandfather, you're going to have to go to bed," he would stop. He would stop fooling with me. He never put me in the position to have him go to bed because he was the one fooling around. He mostly knew when to stop. And maybe that's why the first time I ever teased my son, Will, I did this. He was sitting in a high chair. You know how adults sometimes put kids in high chairs when they're making dinner and they put those toys on the tray, the ones with the suction cup on the bottom, and they go back and forth, or if they're old enough, maybe some Cheerios to keep them busy. Well, I was taking a break from making dinner and playing this game with him that my parents had taught me called Don't Bite My Fingers. He didn't have any teeth. He couldn't bite my fingers, but I pretend. I go, "Don't bite my fingers." You get the cheer. I go, "Oh, you bit my fingers." He'd laugh. I'd done this about 20 times, and I was kind of ready for something else. So I thought maybe he's ready for a trick. I held out the Cheerio, and just as he was about to get it, just as his mouth was about to close around it, I pulled it away. And he bit down on air. He got this confused look on his 1-year-old face as if to say, "Where's that Cheerio?" So I held it up, and his face seemed to say, "Oh, there it is." And he went to get it. And just as he was about to get it, I pulled it away again. This time he got the joke. I sort of knew he would, or I wouldn't have tried it in the first place. He laughed, I laughed. The third time I held out the Cheerio, I let him get it. Because you quickly learn as an adult, or even sooner, you do not tease 1-year-olds for very long, unless you want to deal with the consequences. And he chewed it up and swallowed it, and then he looked at me. He looked at the Cheerios on his tray, and he picked one up, and he held it out to me. And I thought, this is going to be interesting. So I went to get it. And just as I was about to get it, he pulled it away. And he held it out again, pulled it away again. But the third time he held it out, he let me get it. So not only was he learning at 1-year-old how to tease, he was also beginning to learn when to stop, which is the most important thing and what can make it fun. Do you know, when he was 6 and his sister was 1, we were remembering the story. We were having dinner, and you know how it is when you both know the story? You kind of tell it back and forth to each other. It takes half the time because you both know it. And we got to the end, we all laughed. I heard his sister say, "Dad." I looked over, and she was sitting in her high chair. She had some Cheerios left over on her tray from before dinner, and she was holding one of them up and holding it out to me. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you want me to get that?" And she just went like this. She went. So I went to get it. And just as I was about to get it, she pulled it away. She held out again, pulled away again, but the third time she held it out, she let me get it. So you never know what's going to happen when you tell a story. My grandfather, unfortunately, didn't get to live long enough to see my kids get born, but they know him because I tell stories about him. Every time I tell that story, it's almost like my grandfather's right here and even my kids are here. And you may have an object at home like this ring or a photograph, reminds you of somebody. You tell a story about them, they'll be right there with you the whole time. So I hope you tell your favorite story to somebody else. Thanks a lot. And I want to thank the Council on Aging for inviting me to share this wonderful occasion and a great meal and your wonderful company, and have a great Thanksgiving.